Hundreds of millions of your tax dollars have gone to build up our international airport. At the same time, it's been drastically shrinking.
The once major hub for Delta now has abandoned terminals and only a fraction of the flights of just 5 years ago. 9 News anchor Brendan Keefe is here with tonight's I-Team investigation. Brendan?
Carolyn Clyde, the Cincinnati Northern Kentucky Airport and Delta had a long and fruitful marriage. While the airline was leaving us for other hubs, CVG remained faithful to Delta and essentially monogamous. This year, 12 million fewer passengers are flying through CVG versus 2005. At the same time, millions of your tax dollars have gone to expand runways and terminals. First one flight, then another. More than 400 daily flights have disappeared from CVG over the last 5 years. The multiple blank screens on Delta's departure board were once filled with more than 650 flights a day. Now there are between 155 and 170, and rows of empty ticket counters where nobody's checking in because Delta checked out. On this flight, the seat next to me is empty, but these days that's unusual. Delta and other airlines are flying 30,000 fewer seats out of CVG than they were just 5 years ago. That's equivalent to the population of Mason, vanished.
We are still a hub in the Delta system, but Delta obviously has retrenched.
John Mock has been running the airport for a little more than a year. He has the job of landing new airlines after Delta took off.
With Delta's repositioning, there is no longer the intimidation factor that was once there, which is why all carriers are taking a look at us.
There's a lot to look at. The 7,000-acre airport has 4 major runways, including the $250 million 18 right, 36 left that opened the very same month Delta slashed its schedule here by 26%. CVG has 3 terminals, but Terminal 1 saw its last flight in 2007. Today, it's a ghost town. Lonely ticket counters stretch from one end of the terminal to the other. The sign pointing to gates 1 through 9 leads to a solid wall. A dripping faucet, the only sound in this green-tiled terminal that once greeted world travelers. The TV screens and phones are gone along with those passengers. The escalators have been turned off for good, and the baggage carousel is waiting for flights that will never arrive. The vending machines apparently didn't get the news.
And notifying airline personnel to leave.
Terminal 2 houses the non-Delta carriers. Its 8 gates are rarely full. And then there's Terminal 3. We found the once bustling Delta hub practically empty in the middle of a weekday. It's called Terminal 3, even though only 2 terminals are open at CVG. And it's called Concourse B, even though it's the only concourse still open in Terminal 3. Concourses A and C have been completely shuttered by Delta. This is a satellite view of Concourse C in 2004. Now the planes and passengers are gone. The buses were parked last year, and the entire facility was mothballed. Concourse A was closed this year. We wanted to show you the abandoned concourse where 840 people worked until last May. But the escalators are marked no admittance. All 36 gates are now closed, the wind whipping through the lonely jetways and empty baggage carts.
Please hold on.
One of the 2 people movers has been shut down. The only operating train has a single destination. It zooms right past the forgotten Concourse A.
It's in our master plan actually to consolidate all air carrier activities in Terminal 3. So the relocation of the carriers that are here in Terminal 2 to Concourse A was always in the game plan, and now the opportunity is to accomplish that sooner than later.
But Delta still holds the leases on these empty gates. They were built by Delta for Delta. The airline has a lock on Concourse A till 2015 and Concourse C through 2025.
In fact, Delta themselves have indicated publicly that they're willing to work with the airport to bring in competition.
There's a huge incentive for Delta. The empty gates are costing the airline money every day. Delta would like to shed the burden of lease payments, debt service, and maintenance costs associated with its abandoned concourses. And the airport would like to turn over those unused gates to low-cost carriers.
So it benefits Delta, if they're not using facilities, to have an alternative service provider come in and alleviate that financial burden from them.
Meanwhile, you and I are still paying for that 8,000-foot new runway and $23 million security checkpoint. Why was the airport growing while the number of passengers was shrinking? The airport's most recent 20-year plan predicted steady increases in travel, not the precipitous decline that has left CVG a shell of its former self. Graphs updated after the first Delta cuts still predicted steady annual gains. Runways were extended to handle transoceanic wide-body jetliners just in time for Delta to switch to smaller regional jets and slash its international schedule out of CVG. And the airport spent $241 million on the new north-south runway, $137 million of it federal tax dollars.
Our peak aircraft activity is so high. In fact, despite the fact that we pulled back a little bit, our peak activity is higher than it's ever been.
Activity would actually plummet from that day on. Today, 30,000 fewer daily seats are flying out of CVG. The 2007 master plan even calls for expanding the now closed Concourse A and eventually building a new Concourse D.
We have aged infrastructure. We have terminals that were built, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
But there is one very encouraging statistic. The airport's campaign is working, and local travelers are coming back to CVG. 5 years ago, 80% of passengers here were just changing planes from one city to another. Now half of the seats are filled by tri-state passengers. Thanksgiving flights sold out in October.
That demand is what's going to attract new carriers to come back and substitute for the services that Delta pulled out.
Now, to be fair, there's no way the airport board could have predicted the trifecta of Delta filing for bankruptcy, the merger with Northwest, or the global recession. What is past is prologue, and now the airport is uniquely positioned for the future. Those extra runways, unused gates, and rising local demand give CVG an edge to lure new carriers and more flights. There's also new leadership with fresh ideas. But Delta tells us it has no plans to return to the days of 655 daily departures, and talks with other airlines are for now just talks. We have a lengthy Q&A with Delta and the entire 20-year airport plan on our website, WCPO.com.